This is a selection from Book 2, Wyrwood, and it's from Chapter 1, Flight and Fury. Tarsa slid to the opposite curtain and pulled it aside to see a bit of what lay beyond. They'd long since left Lake Ithiac behind, but the main road to Aramar City followed the Orme River, and its blasted banks gave mute testimony to that nation's history. The waters of the Orme, like those of the lake into which it sluggishly flowed, were choked with sediment and bright with strange liquids that drained from the jumbled gray stone and brick structures squatting at its sides. These massive buildings stretched high into the air, all harsh lines and sharp angles, with few windows but many dark chimneys that belched out clouds of dripping black smoke. Even sophisticated goblin coachcraft couldn't keep the acrid stench from creeping into the carriage and nearly choking its passengers. Hakad and Othwaite coughed themselves awake. A wrongness pervaded the harsh stone structures. They were festering wounds, infected to the very core with a seeping miasma that stretched into the soil and sky. Yet Tarsa's shock at seeing these caustic towers and fumes was nothing compared to the sight of the creatures who lived in and among them. This was the true horror. Worn brittle with hunger and want, poisoned for years by the massive foundries and mills, the humans lived now as they had since the first wars of conquest that the Drade and their followers used to solidify their hold on the province and extend it to the lands beyond. The children were ragged and covered with open sores, their bruised and pinched features sullen, nothing like the playful kin younglings who ran with abandon through their mountain homes. Old before their time, women gathered in groups of 4 or 5 heads covered by dull brown or black caps, and crouched with long, rough skirts trailing in the frigid river waters to slap shreds of cloth against oil-slick rocks. The upper banks of the river were covered with bearded men of various ages, but each bore the heavy weight of poverty on his wasted countenance. They sat together and stared hungrily after the carriage. "Why do they look at us that way?" Tarsa asked, her voice tight. A knot of bile rose up in her throat. Rael sighed and let his curtain drop. "Why shouldn't they? This is the only life they know. They live and die by the will of their masters in the mills and the mines, discarded when they aren't of any more use. And ever in the shadows is the will of Aramar, demanding more iron, more weapons, more labor, always driving the people further and further. But they do it always with the hope that their Drade-blessed next life will be better than this one. That is not the only reason," Imweshi growled, but her sharp features had softened to something resembling pity. "They blame us for their misery." "Us? But we've not done nothing to them." Imweshi stared out the window. "No. Look at them, conjurer. The masters of Aramar have told them for decades that their poverty, their suffering, their pain and degradation are all the result of those greedy, selfish, brutish creatures living in the green and fertile Everland. They are told that we worship evil spirits, that we engage in debauchery and bloodshed, that we kidnap, violate, and butcher humans of all ages, that life means nothing to us beyond the gratification of our animal pleasures. As evidence of our witchery, we've tainted their lands, sent evil winds to curse the crops, poison their cattle, kill children still in the womb, and bring down the strong. It has to be our fault, after all. Hasn't all this happened since the melting 1,000 years ago? And we've used those dark arts to make our own land rich beyond measure, with gold and other precious metals deep in our mountains, just waiting to be found by those with unbending determination." "But those are lies." Imweshi turned with a frigid smile. "Of course they are. But who cares? Does it matter to them? She gestured toward the window. Who are they going to believe? Us? We well-fed, clean, healthy, wealthy, coach-riding kin? Perhaps you, with all your backwoods finery, can convince them that the mechanical beasts that draw this carriage are something other than dark sorcery. What will you say to them, my truth-telling wielder? Will your truth feed them, clothe them, give them warm houses? And what would they rather hear? That Lojar Vald and his kind have driven them halfway into their graves out of greed and selfish ambition? That the promises of another life are mere manipulations to ensure their subservience in this one? Or that a small group of backward barbarians are the only thing between them and their salvation? If you stood in their stead, whom would you believe? The carriage crested a hill and left the foundries and the empty-eyed humans behind. Tarsa slid a hand to the window and let the curtain fall.